All right, we're now recording, guys. Thank you very much for coming on down to Cybersecurity Human Hacking. The check-in code, if you haven't used it already, is person, although I don't really think that's worth mentioning now that I've started recording, because the only time you would probably be watching this is if you're watching the recording, and you can't check in if you're watching the recording. So, but at least you'll get the learning experience. We're going to go over some quick slides. This is a seminar that I gave last quarter. We'll see that actually here pretty soon. Do I have my clicker? Let's see here. I do have a clicker, so you guys don't have to hear me click through the presentation like this. That would kind of suck. Here's the beautiful graphic that I believe ProHit made for me. It's awesome. I love it. I like how all the, to use Matei's words, all of the people in the stock photo are going poggers looking at some computer or something. The date on this is correct, which is good. Last quarter when I gave this workshop, the marketing graphic looked a little bit like this. I also find the charm in this one. It is clearly something that happened earlier this year. This was back when my workshops were held from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. There were maybe like 6 people in Qualcomm room total, just because of how ass of a time that is. So I'm very glad to be able to bring in a whopping 14 of you in to see it broadcast straight into your living rooms or your movie theaters or wherever you're projecting me right now. I don't know. So, in addition to just porting it over, I don't want you guys to think that all I did was copy and paste it, although I will admit that is exactly how I started to create this presentation. As you could tell from the thumbnail, the previous workshop used some seriously out-of-date design guidelines, and we have since updated it to make every font DM sans, and also to include that cyber logo in the bottom left-hand corner, which will be showing up here shortly. So I put in a lot of work. Also, I have put some new slides in here and there to bring the total up to about 63. You are on slide 4, so we are making good progress. But buckle up, this might be a long one. It'll be fun, though. Everything on here is fun. I would never make a bad workshop. Not capable of it. So speaking of new slides, it's time for a poll. Just to test out the polling features and make sure you guys are all awake, please answer this question. Which marketing graphic do you prefer? The old one or the new one? I'm going to go ahead and just pop up a yes, no. Oh, wait, no, it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be AB, isn't it? Whoopsie. Let me fix that. Boom. There we go. There we go. Wow, interesting. There's actually an overall contender. Pretty much everyone has voted already. And it looks like a whopping 62% of us prefer the old graphic to the new graphic. I will admit, I had a lot of fun posing for that old one. I had to put on a ski mask and a shirt and tie, and I thought I looked kind of cool. But I also like the one that ProHit made, so I'm not going to talk shit about that. Okay, we're up to, everyone's voted. About 30% of us like the new one. I like them both. They're both good. All right, just making sure I'm not missing anything. All right, I'm going to take a drink because I'm thirsty, not because I'm distracted. Feel free to take a drink too if you would like. Unfortunately, the punishment of drinking has actually made me less likely to get distracted. I'm becoming more disciplined, which I guess was originally the point, but well, whatever. Thank you for participating. This was a new slide, and as you can see, we've got the cyber logo in the bottom left-hand corner. So this presentation is kind of interesting. We're going to talk about hacking, but not the version of hacking that many of you who came to my previous workshops will be familiar with. Today we're going to talk about human hacking. And like all of our workshops, we're going to start with a quote. The quote today is, "Two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity. And I am not yet completely sure about the universe." Do we have any guesses? Okay. Screw you, Eason. You actually went to the old one. Hey, no, I'm looking at the chat. Okay, fine. Drink. Everyone drink. I don't care. Just drink. Any guesses to see? It was Einstein, by the way. Right? It's this bearded guy. By the way, if you've ever seen any young pictures of Einstein, I think it's kind of interesting that most of the major pictures of Einstein are from when he was old, because he actually released his papers on spatial relativity and general relativity, both when he was in his early 20s, which I think is incredible. I mean, like for anyone here who's like 21 or 22, like how does that make you feel? What are you doing with your life? Anyways, he was actually less attractive then. He's more attractive now. So I think that's probably why there aren't too many pictures of him when he's young. Anyways, I'm getting a little distracted. I'm going to go ahead and drink because I kind of went on a tangent there. And I'm also going to say that I lied to you, and that despite this quote very often being attributed to Einstein, Einstein in fact had never once said this quote. But in our popular culture, we tend to associate this quote and him for some reason. And the reason I made this quote the quote that embodies this workshop isn't because it embodies the what is important about human hacking, just people being stupid. It's because it very cleanly identifies how easy it is to have a misconception about something. There's a difference between stupidity and ignorance, just not knowing. And the only way you can learn the difference is through training. And that's going to be a reoccurring theme in today's workshop, is training people, educating people to get them aware of security problems, because otherwise they don't stand a chance against a lot of the things we're going to be talking about today. So get ready. Let's hack ACM again. Don't worry, I'm not going to pull up ACMUCSD.co and start like hacking stuff like I did for my software hacking workshop. The truth is I've already done exactly what I wanted to do. I've already hacked it. Back when I gave this presentation, if you had gone to the leaderboard and checked the website, it would have looked like this. This is definitely a picture that reminds me of simpler times. You still have the Firefox bug where the logo in the top right-hand corner, your picture is like broken and off-center from where it's supposed to be. This was back before we had profile picture uploads. Kind of glad we have those now. These things are ugly. And we definitely had some text centering issues in some of these. But you'll also notice that this picture from February of this year shows that even Alan himself, who by now has, I think, about twice as many points as he does in this picture, is no match for the one, the only, the illustrious Aaron Eason with 9,999 points. Now, have I been to that many workshops? The answer is no. I have hosted plenty, but I did not have those points legitimately. I hacked ACMUCSD.com. I could have done horrific damage by deleting every single user in the database, but all I did was I increased my points to 9,999, just to illustrate that it was in fact vulnerable. So now you might be asking yourself, okay, Aaron, we get it. You're a big hacker, but like, what was the vulnerability? What did you do to be able to do that? Was it Photoshopped? To which I'll respond, no, it was not a Photoshop. That was a real thing that I had changed in ACMUCSD's database on their end to make it look like that to everyone. And if I was still like that today, you'd be able to pull up ACMUCSD.com, the leaderboard, and see me. It was not inspect element. I did not just right click and change how the page looked in the browser to put myself as number one. It was not SQL injection. In general, the ACMUCSD page uses fairly modern web design and as far as the back end, and fairly standardized input sanitization. From the best attempts that I made to kind of audit that portal, I did not see any major issues, and we really don't have a surface area or a project lifespan really that would make an injection attack feasible. So it wasn't that. And I could have hacked Heroku, right? Like if I had some way of getting onto Heroku, which is basically the VPS provider that ACM uses to host our website, that would have also given me access, but I didn't do that. And then you're probably wondering, okay, did you do some like crazy 0-day, never before seen, NASA grade exploit? And the answer is no, actually, I didn't do any of these things. I didn't perform any technical hacking. Instead, this was the vulnerability. That's right. Our former dictator and leader, Emily. You see, one day in February, we had an event that had yet to have an event check-in code created for it. Or rather, I believe the event check-in code was created, or the event was created, but it was incorrect. And this was back before the portal had the ability to edit events that were already published. So Emily had to log into the Heroku server to be able to access the database that backs it and delete that entry so we could re-add it. And she did this on my laptop. Now, the really cool thing about Heroku is that when you log into Heroku, it does a very good job of remembering who you are. So if you don't log out and you go back to herokuapp.com, you will still be signed in. And so when Emily needed to make those changes, I offered up my laptop. She signed in on my laptop. Then when she was done, she closed the tab. But of course, closing the tab is not sufficient to log out of a website. And when she left, I simply pressed Control-Shift-T to reopen the tab. I navigated to the Postgres database. I channeled into it using the credentials, and all I did was type like a single SQL query to set my points to like 9,999. Again, I could have done terrible damage. But at the end of the day, there really wasn't a vulnerability in anything the dev team was in charge of. This was purely human hacking. This is an excellent example of it, really. Don't try that, by the way. So the takeaway on this whole example is just log out of websites when you're done with them. Oh, I thought I put a poll here. That's okay. So that's basically all we're going to be talking about this entire presentation. Is we're going to be talking about examples of human hacking or examples of data breaches. You can't really call what I did a data breach, but examples of data breaches, and we're going to examine how much of a role these human vulnerabilities played in them being a data breach, basically. So I'm looking at the chat because I'm tired and I want to drink. The admin account password is Godsnoot 2020 with an exclamation mark. I notice you trash, don't worry. All right, we're getting back into it. Focus, focus, focus. I did say drink. I said drink. If you haven't already. Okay, you ready? Let's talk about the 2016 Uber breach. This is one of my favorite data breaches to talk about because it is probably the least well-handled data breach of information in all of memory that I know of. They really screwed this one up. For one thing, the amount of data that was compromised was about 50 million riders and 7 million drivers, and included things like names, emails, phone numbers, and about 500,000 driver's licenses. Not things that you want just out there, for sure. So that was a goof up. So what Uber did that made this about 1 million times worse was they failed to disclose the breach for a year and instead attempted to pay the ransom for the data, which was about $100,000, to delete the stolen data. They paid the money, then the hacker proceeded to release the information, which, not saying I would ever be in that situation, but if I was that hacker, I would probably do that too. Because painting a target on your back as a company that pays ransoms is stupid, and they deserve to be punished for not properly disclosing the information. Companies that don't disclose their data breaches are not companies that should be trusted. So you might be wondering, damn, that's a lot of data to get a hold of. Surely it was caused by some crazy hacker from like, you know, some crazy country like, I don't know, North Korea, and they used cutting edge 0-day exploits to hack in, and this was kind of what caused it. But in actuality, the hack was caused by this. Does anyone know what this is? Yeah, okay. This was the actual cause. By the way, go ahead and drink because I'm looking at chat. Yes. This was the actual cause of the 2016 Uber hacks. And I'll go ahead and define this real fast. What happened here is someone who works at Uber, and Uber has some open source code that's available on GitHub, right? Someone at Uber published, and you're never, ever, ever supposed to do this, the AWS config keys, API keys, that basically give access to all of Uber's infrastructure to the public GitHub account. Now, truthfully, this is a kind of common mistake, but common in the sense that you would expect like a newbie developer to do it, not, you know, a high market cap company like Uber. And they were actually one of the first ones to probably be widely caught doing this, and they were probably the biggest breach of data that's been caused by this problem, such that anyone who has done this at all recently knows that if you were to do this, you get an email that looks like this from an automated bot that Amazon, the owner of AWS, has created, that basically scans GitHubs and looks for accidentally published AWS keys, disables the access keys so it no longer works, or at least I think it does. And then it sends you an email to be like, did you know you just published your AWS keys because you're a dumbass? And it tells you to get new ones, which I don't know if this really would have saved Uber, but it saves a lot of us nowadays, that's for sure. I think even ACMUCSD, I think someone on dev team did that recently. Not going to throw any shade. someone did that. Okay. I'm not sure who did it. I don't remember who did it. All right, I'm going to drink. Almost out of wine here. I'll have to move to beer. I mean, what? Root beer. Root beer, guys. I'm joking. Also, this is vitamin water. I'm joking. All right. Moving on. Not getting too distracted here. Let's talk about the 2017 Equifax breach. This is not the super recent one that happened in 2019. They actually got their data breached before that, too. This was still big. I think this is the largest exposure of credit card information until the 2019 breach, which was even bigger. So that's not good. Included names, addresses, driver's license, which is all the things that got leaked in Uber, but also credit details. So credit card numbers, mortgage information, your credit report, like just generally stuff you don't want people walking around with. You could definitely use that to like file some fraudulent tax returns and stuff. So this was also very poorly handled by Equifax. They had 3 executives very publicly sell off a massive amount of stock 3 days before their disclosure, which is massively scummy and insider trading, though there were no repercussions for this legally. The chief security officer of Equifax before the breach had little to no experience in the role. And by little to no experience, I mean she was literally a theater major. Her only degree was in theater, and she was the chief security officer of Equifax. I'm not going to get into that any more than I already have. And in addition, many of you will remember that if you were impacted by Equifax, you had the opportunity to look up what your impact was on their website. They published an impact tool. But if you used it, you actually agreed to not be a part of a class action lawsuit against Equifax in like the fine print when you go to agree to use this tool. So in general, Equifax is trying to take the title of scummiest company in the United States away from EA with this whole really, really disastrous situation. And much like the Uber hack, you might be thinking that it was caused by some insane technical problem that no one could have seen coming, but in reality it was caused by an unpatched bug in their web server software called Apache Struts that was at least 2 months old. That is to say, if at any point in a 2-month period they had done an audit of their own security, they would have seen this bug, patched it, and not suffered the breach, which tells you how often they were actually doing those audits. Probably never. That's not good. TDLR run apt get upgrade. That's true. npm audit fix. Drink, dudes. I kind of want to get through this vitamin water. I want to get to the beer before it gets too warm. All right, bros. Let's keep going. Oh yeah, this one. I forget about this one every single time. The 2018 U.S. Marines breach. This one's kind of cringe, not going to lie. So not as impressive in terms of numbers. 21,000 impacted U.S. Marines, soldiers, sailors, and civilians. But the information that was leaked is big big deal, big boy data like social security numbers, bank details, credit cards, and addresses, not things you just want floating around. And you might be asking yourself, how did this all get out? Someone in the US Marines uploaded the entire financial information of everyone in the US Marines to an email and accidentally hit reply all and sent it to every single email in their entire contacts list. So every single person who is in contact with the Marines received a spreadsheet with every single Marine's social security number, bank details, credit cards, and addresses. Good job, Marines. It kind of begs the question. It kind of begs the question, why does this shit exist? What were you supposed to, what was the technical issue here? And how are you supposed to solve it? It kind of makes you feel hopeless, doesn't it? Clearly, technology is not the problem here. Data breaches are caused by hacking, but data breaches are enabled by you and I, humans. That's the only reason they're possible. Cybersecurity always has and always will be a human issue. If you just look at this pie chart I've created here, this is a percentage of breaches that are preventable. That is to say, all of them, right? Everything we talked about here was easily mitigatable and was a financial disaster in many, many ways because it wasn't mitigated properly. The only solution is constant, persistent education. I'm going to refine this pie chart a little bit because it doesn't look like much of a pie when it's just a completely round circle. This part is the percentage of breaches that are preventable by not being stupid, which is to say not all of them. Some of them are genuinely out of you and I's control, but most of them, a vast majority of these breaches. So the rest of this presentation will focus on this self-same topic, how to not be stupid. Actually, that's probably kind of not the cleanest way to say that. Instead, let's call it this: how to stay continuously educated on the many dangers posed by online threat actors and stay aware of the attack vectors that are preventable by you, the user. That's a little bit more kosher, I think. Time for a poll. Let's get on the topic of passwords. How do you guys feel about passwords? Here are your options, by the way. Option number A: I just remember all my passwords. Yeah, right, whatever. Option B: I reuse the same password for everything. Option C: I reset my password every time I log in. That's Stanley, apparently. Option D: I use a password manager. I'm going to go ahead and open the poll up here. Go ahead and incriminate yourselves as quickly as possible. Please don't use the official ACM password manager. Interesting. This is actually a pretty interesting spread. I've always wanted to know what kind of spread this has for for CS people in particular. Because I know what the spread is for normal people. So it's interesting to see it for CS people. We got pretty much everyone. So the results are roughly a three-way split between A, B, and D. No one wants to admit to the fact that they reset their password every time they log in. A majority of people said A, closely followed by D, closely followed by B. So clearly, plenty of us are using password managers, which I think is kind of a CS thing. I think CS people are a lot more likely to do that. And some of us just remember passwords, which maybe these next slides won't be as useful for you, but I'm going to try to be helpful anyway. Let's see here. Maybe for the people who reuse their same password for everything, might benefit from these slides. So let's talk about passwords. This is kind of a tired topic. I'm sure you're tired of being told what your password should look like. You're probably sitting at your desk right now thinking oh my God, Aaron, why are you talking about how to make a secure password? Are you serious right now? This is not supposed to be some ETS lecture. Are you part of UCSD tech support or something? No. Just bear with me here. I actually have some fairly original advice for you here. First of all, I think passwords are a hilarious topic because after 30 years in existence, we still haven't figured out a good way to do these. No one's agreed on how passwords should work. I mean, clearly corporations don't have the answer here. This is one of my favorites. Please don't make your ACM portal password Nutella. That's not a good password. It's an incredibly common password. That's a dictionary word. Do not make your password Nutella. Clearly, celebrities don't know what passwords should be either. I don't know if all of you remember. Does anyone remember what Kanye's password is on his iPhone from this very, very infamous, infamous video? Yes, it is 4 zeros. So funny. Yeah, Breadbot got it first. All right, drink to that. Good stuff. Good stuff. I think I actually have a link to this video in the like spreadsheet of links that you'll get when this presentation's over. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, so clearly corporations don't have it. Clearly celebrities don't know how to make a good password. So let's talk about another topic of passwords real fast. We're going to do another poll. We're going to talk about 2FA, two-factor authentication. It's just to be clear, it's what you use to get onto your UCSD email, the Duo thing. It like pushes something to your phone, and that's probably something that we all use. Your options today are option A, I use 2FA for everything. Sure, whatever. Option B, I use it for important things only. Option C is, what's 2FA? And option D is 2FA, more like too flipping annoying. Here, let me start a poll here for 4 options. Go ahead and let me know how you feel. Thank God no one's picking the option with that cringy ass emoji in it. No. Yeah, Bryce has to ban me now for using this. Bryce ends the stream. There's no redeeming the stream anymore. We've crossed the line. It's too far. It's too much. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close the polls. It's actually pretty even. It's about split between A and B for the number 1 result. 3 of us said C, probably just because I mentioned it. And 1 of us said D. So one of us really doesn't like 2FA. I'm going to go ahead and publish the poll, although you can't see it because I'm screen sharing. That's just how it works, I guess. Pop the chat open again so I can get easily distracted. Oh, by the way, guys, I'm out of this drink, so we're moving on to the bubbly. It's time for some ASMR. Get close to your headphones here. Turn your sound up. I kind of hope this makes me burp. Okay, let's try to keep this in. Whew. All right. I don't think I ever did a presentation where I was shirtless. Shut up. All right, let's go. Let's go. Thank you for participating in that poll. We're going to move on. If I can refocus the presentation and use my pointer here. Beach workshop. So I'm going to go ahead and present some ideas on that I think are fairly original on what makes a good password, just because I like to pretend that people care what I think about these topics. So good ideas for passwords generally are, yes, you should use alpha and numerals. You should use upper and lower case. It's obnoxious, I know, but go for it. It should be longer than 8 characters. Some websites require a length limit to your password. You can't make it longer than a certain number of characters. Those websites can die, but you generally should require more than 8 characters. No dictionary words. Sorry, don't put your name. Don't put because there's so many websites that just reject those outright. So it's better off just come up with one good, strong password that adheres to all these requirements. And then finally, 2FA on everything. For those of you who didn't say you use 2FA on everything, use 2FA on everything. It actually, in the long run, will make your life a lot easier, because most of those websites that have 2FA have the option to remember your device for 60 days or something like that, such that you don't have to do it repeatedly. You only do it once, and it makes your account much more secure because it's a much better proof of who you are than just whether or not someone knows your password. Here's some bad ideas as far as creating passwords. Time limits on passwords are stupid. Forcing a person to come up with a new password for their account. All the studies show that all it does is it forces the person to come up with a new password that is less secure. People will always create another password that is less secure than their previous one. There's no real reason to just force people to change their passwords after time. In the same line of reasoning, Forcing people to come up with new passwords repeatedly. I'm looking at you, ETS department. Incredibly stupid. Just don't force people to change their password to something new if they want to change their password. Again, it just forces them to come up with something that's less secure or something that they forget and end up having to reset again. And it just creates this vicious cycle of death. Security questions are dumb. I hate them. I think security questions are so stupid. Security questions are the cause of literal billions of dollars of tax fraud every single year because of people who submit fraudulent tax returns on the irs.gov website by using the get transcript feature, which is entirely based upon answering vague security questions like those. So you'd think we would give up on them. They're annoying. All the websites use the same security questions. We're all going to know what the answers are. What was your first pet? I don't know. If I know you, I probably know. Or like, what was the street you grew up on? Probably know that too. Like, it's not hard to find that kind of information out, especially if we were born in the modern age. Anyway, I'm not going to rant too hard. This one's going to be a little divisive. Don't use password managers. It's going to be a little divisive. I think password managers are dumb. I have a lot of good reasons for thinking password managers are dumb. Using password managers would be great. Okay. Okay, I just had to look at the chat because I wanted to see what people would be saying about this. Yeah, go ahead and drink up, guys. Password managers are dumb. If anyone was here for my, was it hardware hacking? Hardware hacking video, I demonstrated how quickly and easily you can steal passwords from MacBook Password Manager, from Google Password Manager, from Firefox Password Manager. Using independent applications like LastPass would be a good idea if LastPass itself didn't have more data breaches than it did have good things to say about it. You can look it up. Basically, every password manager out there right now gets it wrong. In principle, password managers are a good idea, but until all of the kinks get ironed out and we have some kind of provably secure way to manage our passwords, this is stupid. Password managers are a necessary step in the quest to go completely passwordless, but we're not there yet, not even close. And here's another good reason why you shouldn't use password managers. Does every password you make on a website have to be unique? Do you have to have a unique password for every website? I know no one here does. No one here uses the different password for every website, but we probably have like 5 or 6 different passwords that we use for everything, you know what I mean? Does every password really need to be unique? And the answer is, actually, it depends. As a security person, I am telling you, it depends. If the site supports 2FA, honest to God, just use anything you want. Doesn't matter. You can use the same password that you use on every website. I'm going to look at you right in the eyes right now. I use the same password on every website that supports 2FA. If the website supports 2FA, I just use the password that is quick for me to type and easy to remember, and that's it. Because 2FA is what's really providing the security on my account. I know that's also slightly controversial. I'm not going to say anything beyond that. Big brain, big brain. However, it's also worth mentioning that if the website doesn't support 2FA, you do have an obligation to come up with a unique, strong password for that website. Just because of, well, actually, we'll get into that in a second here. Here's a quick recipe, by the way, that I use to create all of my passwords. It's the cookbook for creating passwords. I think this one is a fairly unique take. It's not super obscure, but I think more people should adopt this strategy. Here's how I make a new password. Step 1 to creating a very strong password is to pick a song that you know the words to, right? Just pick a song that you know the words by heart. You could sing it if it started playing right now. Then use the first letter of each word, about 8 letters or so, like say 2 full lines of the song, just use the first letter of each word. And then add a symbol that you can easily remember and then some numbers that you can easily remember at the end. And perfect. That's it. You're done. Like literally that is a secure password, like fairly secure. And here's the important part, easy to remember. You can come up with these on the fly. So let's take some lyrics that I will never forget for as long as I live. I can go ahead and use this strategy to create a password that looks like this. It's just the first letter of each word, but it looks fairly random, and it's definitely not going to be guessable by a dictionary attack of any kind. The final step to creating it is to just add a symbol and some letters and numbers at the end that kind of make it a little bit like basically adhere to standards that require you to include symbols and numbers. And then you're done. That's it. You created a secure password. Congratulations. Super easy. And it's easy to remember. When you go to type this in, all you have to do is remember it started out with a kiss. How did it end up like this? So the only real downside to this is you have to make sure to not pick a song with very low lyrical entropy. You have to make sure that the song you use has enough diversity in its lyrics that it actually creates a good password. Go ahead and drink, guys. You earned it. Thank you for staying with me. I love you guys. All right, let's move on. So again, all of this talking to you about how to make a secure password kind of just sounds like someone else's problem, right? You don't need to hear this. You guys are CS people. You know what you're doing. But here's some interesting statistics. 63% of all confirmed data breaches involve weak default or stolen passwords of some kind. Passwords cause a lot of problems. 81% of all users on the internet have admitted to reusing passwords across 2 or more websites. And 25% of users use the same password across a majority of their websites, which kind of reflects what the poll that I took earlier revealed. Oh my goodness. Excuse me, sorry. Maybe the root beer was a bad idea. Anyways. So there's something very important that you need to understand called credential stuffing. It has always been around for as long as the web has been around, but it started to become a major problem. Credential stuffing is the practice of taking login credentials from one data breach and using it to attempt logins on other platforms with the same email that that password was associated with before. So this is the real danger being caused by people using the same password. If Equifax suffers a data breach and some hacker downloads the data breach, they could probably just take all of the emails and try them on Facebook with the password that they use for Equifax. And let's be honest here, most of them, according to this, about 25% of those will be successful. So somehow having about 145 million Equifax accounts translates to having like 30 million Facebook accounts because of the reuse of passwords. And that is basically what credential stuffing is. You just use it over and over and over to continuously get more and more passwords and usernames off of these websites. And here's a great story that kind of embodies this idea. I'm going to talk about a group called the Xbox Underground, which if you know what this is, I would be very surprised. But I'm going to talk about it anyways. Also, I got distracted, so let's read. Because Breadbot posted his SSH public key in the chat. Drink. All right. Let's go, dudes. So let's talk about Xbox Underground. They were an international hacker group, kind of like ACM is now, but we're all kind of like on Zoom and ACM Live all the time, that were active in the years from 2011 to 2013 that used credential stuffing to amazing success to eventually get login credentials to every internal network in the entire video game industry. I mean, there was some seriously impressive stuff going on. Wait, you guys are dumb. I got distracted by you guys being dumb. You're gonna have to reset your private key, dude. All right. Not getting distracted. Using the credential stuffing, they were able to exfiltrate massive amounts of data internal to these companies, blueprints and source code for the Xbox, Xbox One, and almost every game that was being produced for that platform. They were literally able to create their own Xbox One like prototype in their own living rooms and sell them before the Xbox One was even released because they had access to the blueprints and were able to recreate it. In addition, they had access to the source code for tons of games like Arma and a couple of others I don't actually remember. Gears of War, I think, was one of them. They had I think you can still download that to this day. You can go on to probably I don't know, some torrenting website and probably just search up Gears of War source code and probably download it. So that's pretty interesting. But at one point, Xbox Underground had access to the internal networks of Microsoft, Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, Activision, Epic Games, Blizzard, Valve, Disney, Warner Brothers, and the US military. Because as it turns out, Activision had a contract with the US military to make a Black Hawk flight simulator. You know, the military-grade helicopter? They made a flight simulator using like whatever Unreal Engine or whatever they were using. Probably not Unreal Engine. But and they sold it to the US military. And because of that, they were able to use credential stuffing, several credentials that were used in the Activision network to get into the network of the US Army. Which that last one is probably a good way to get yourself in trouble. So here's basically a good idea of how they were able to use credential stuffing to stuff the entire industry. They probably did use Unity. Excuse me. No more root beer, guys. I'm going to go ahead and drink water, but go ahead and drink. Yeah, sshmilitary@us.gov. We're making good time. All right. Here's basically what they did. They started out by exploiting a gaming forum. Now, this gaming forum was running a piece of bulletin board software called MyBB, which just stands for My Bulletin Board. It is a very widely used piece of software written in PHP for hosting your own forum. And it also has probably more vulnerabilities than any public-facing web service type thing, except for maybe like WordPress. It has a ton of surface area for exploits, and it's also written in PHP, so that should tell you everything you should need to know. So basically, they were able to exploit it. Wouldn't be particularly hard to exploit an out-of-date MyBB instance, or probably even an up-to-date MyBB instance. And when they hacked this gaming forum, they noticed that there were some emails belonging to people from Epic Games. Epic Games being, of course, one of the major gaming companies at the time, and also still. So what happened is they were able to take these emails and these passwords and try them on Epic Games' internal network. And they were actually able to get in to Epic Games' internal network. And they were able to do things like, well, download the source code for upcoming games and just basically get more logins and usernames from that network. And they were also able to go from there to other gaming forums. They were able to find other forums other than the one they had originally exploited, where Epic Games employees were signed up for. And what they realized is that they were able to usually log into these other gaming forums as Epic Game employees. And when they did that, they noticed that usually the Epic Games employees had moderator status on these gaming forums, or even admin status on these gaming forums, which in turn allowed them to make several API queries to backends that only admins have access to and effectively download the entire user database for those other gaming forums. So then they had more usernames and hashed passwords that they were trivially able to decrypt. And then using those credentials, they were able to basically log into so many different internal networks for other gaming companies that were on those gaming forums that they exploited with the Epic Games credentials. So this includes, again, Microsoft, Activision, basically everyone. Everyone got wrecked by this. It's insane how much they did that. So to further illustrate credential stuffing, let's all take a poll. This one's going to be interactive. Get your browser ready for this one. You ready? How many people know your password? Let's find out. I want you all to go to haveibeenpwned.com. I'm going to go ahead and type it in here. And what you do when you go to haveibeenpwned.com, which I just put in the shared notes, and I will also put in the public chat. Hey, it's a poll. You don't have to post your status. I'm going to go ahead and put up the poll. Go ahead and tell me how many breaches your email account. If you type in your email account, haveibeenpwned.com, will check to see how many different databases and data breaches they were able to find your email in, which means that in those databases, your username and password are probably well known. So go ahead and respond with how many breaches you were found in. Redbot, no! How are you pwned on 21 sites? What the hell? Yeah, Jesus Christ. Okay. Oh man, I'm not liking these results coming in. This is upsetting me a little bit. I'm gonna drink some root beer to that. Good lord, dudes. I'm pwned on ACMUCSD.com. Town of Salem. Oh, to be clear, there's no shame. If I were to respond to this question, I would definitely be in category C. So I'm going to go ahead and end polling. The results are as follows. There are 4 people who have been in 0 breaches. Good job, 4 people. There are 9 people that have been anywhere from 1 to 5 breaches. And there are 2 people who have been breached over 10 times, including Breadbot, who has been breached 21 times. Good job, Breadbot. Good job. Oh, it turned into 10 people got from 1 to 5 breaches. My point is that all of us, a vast majority of us, have been compromised at one point or another. And credential stuffing can happen to you. And probably has happened to you. I think, I've only ever really been hacked once. And it was through credential stuffing. And it was my Starbucks account. Someone in LA bought themselves 10 Frappuccinos or something. And I was able to get the refund, so it didn't matter. In fact, I was able to get the refund on my Starbucks account, locked them out of the account, but I was able to keep the stars that they gave me from spending $100 on Frappuccinos. So I was able to get 3 free drinks out of it or something. It was kind of nice, not gonna lie. Hey, if anyone wants to hack my Starbucks account, I'll give you a free drink. Dead serious. All right. Well, let's move on, guys. Thanks you for participating in that one. That was fun. I love playing that game. Oh, let's talk about phishing. Phishing's a fun topic. I like talking about phishing. It's a little bit like passwords, but most people understand that their passwords are insecure. They aren't defensive about it. Phishing's different. Phishing is kind of like street magic. Everyone thinks they would never fall for phishing until it actually happens to them. There's this stigma that phishing is something that only happens to stupid people. But the reality is, you're right, it happens to stupid people, but also normal people. It happens to people who are perfectly intelligent. Phishing is broadly defined, by the way, as fraudulent electronic attempts to steal information by posing as trustworthy. And I thought this definition was fascinating and worth including because when you think about it, credit card skimmers are a type of phishing. In fact, go ahead and let me know which one of these you think is a phishing credit card scanner or the legitimate credit card scanner. Go ahead. Just put left or right in the chat. I don't have a poll for this one. Some people think both. I want to say right is phishing. Right is phishing. I actually don't remember. Don't let the red arrow lead you on or something. Or maybe it is the left. I don't even remember which one of these is phishing. I shouldn't have even asked this question. I don't remember. I'm going to go ahead and drink to that, though. That was good. I've got more examples, by the way. These things, yeah, maybe some of us would be able to discern this and not fall victim of this. I mean, after all, if you went up to the ATM machine, I don't know how many of you do this, but sometimes when I go up to an ATM, I will actually grab the slot where the card goes in and I will jiggle it to kind of, I don't know, just make sure it doesn't just pop off in my hand or something. Maybe I'm just paranoid, but I do that technically. But then there's stuff like this. This is a credit card skimmer that goes inside of the credit card slot. You're not going to find these. You will never find these. And they will skim your credit card, and there's nothing you can do about it. Kind of sucks. Check this out. This one is one that is kind of crazy. Where do people think? Where do you think the credit card skimmer is on here? Do you think it's on the keypad? Do you think it's on the credit card reader? Yeah, Ishan, we all know you know what it is. Yeah, no, it's this. There's a credit card skimmer stuck in this plate at the top. And hilariously, this thing is actually just like an old Motorola cell phone connected to a battery pack. And it just watches the keypad and steals your PIN. So I don't know, like I guess now I'm just supposed to go up to the ATM with like a crowbar and like start taking apart the pieces of metal to make sure I'm not getting skimmed. The point is, you're not going to be able to stop yourself from getting skimmed. What you should be doing is behaving in a way such that you assume you already have been skimmed. What's the worst possible damage that could be done to you if you were skimmed today? But of course, that's a topic for a different discussion because that's more about credit cards. Back to phishing. Now, this is a phishing email. This is the phishing that people think of when I say phishing, right? I went into my spam folder and I literally pulled this out. This is something that I received within the last 30 days, and it's pretty typical. This is what people expect when they see phishing. Generally, you don't have to worry about anyone falling for this unless they're your grandparents, right? You and I know not to send money to Nigerian princes, but maybe they don't. And there is a population that falls for this kinds of phishing, but really this kind of phishing isn't even really worth talking about, in my opinion. What about phishing that looks like this? What if you received this? What would you do? Would you think there's anything strange about it? Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you'd think there's something strange about it. Maybe you'd notice it. Maybe you wouldn't click on it. But maybe you wouldn't, right? It's a little bit more convincing. What if you were targeted? Because this could be sent to anyone with a Gmail account. But what if it was something that could very clearly only be sent to you? For example, what if you got an email that looked like this? It had your name. It had your PID. It had the exact format that the school uses when telling you to complete your financial aid. And when you click the link, it sends you to here. Would you think twice? Probably not. Go ahead, admit it. You would click on that link and you would sign in. I would, probably. I don't think there's anyone here who probably wouldn't fall for this. Because this is targeted. And there's actually a name for this. It's called spear phishing. A targeted phishing attack carefully crafted for a particular individual. You can see my very hastily ripped off spear icon stock image in the top right-hand corner. It is much more difficult to protect yourself against an attack like this without being super paranoid and second-guessing everything you see. 50% of recipients of spear phishing attacks open the emails and click on the links within the first hour of it being sent to them. So this is a real problem. And here's a statistic that's even crazier. 90% of all incidences and breaches include some kind of phishing element. Which is crazy. That's way too many. But also, when you think about it, there's only so much you can attack the technology. Technology has a finite attack surface. There's only so much complexity there to take advantage of, only so many oversights to look for. Humans, on the other hand, in the words of not Albert Einstein, have infinite stupidity, infinite surface area for attack. So why wouldn't you go there first? It's not that hard to craft a spear phishing attack, and are remarkably effective from the looks of it. Unfortunately, there is no cure-all solution. You might be saying, what if I use two-factor authentication? Then the phishing page that steals my login information doesn't work, right? It doesn't matter if someone knows my username or my password or anything. You couldn't get into my Triton link. But the thing is that sophisticated phishing software can actually easily bypass this. You're probably thinking something like this would put a stop in the tracks of a potential hacker, but in reality, you can create a convoluted phishing portal that basically does this. If this is you logging in to my fake UCSD single sign-on, and that is the real login page down at the bottom, then all I have to do as the phishing page is I take in your request for information and I pass it along kind of like a proxy to the real login page. So when you go and click the send me a push, the phishing website forwards that to the real website, which ends up buzzing your phone. And when you click approve, the real website sends the confirmation back to the phisher, and the phisher has access to your account. They have the same access as it would if you had approved it yourself, because you literally just did approve it yourself. You just let the phisher in. And it's something that you have to take into account of if you're making a phishing website. It's not enough to just make a static web page that looks like the real login. You have to also create a proxy for this two-factor authentication software, but it's still not complex. Mate could probably do it in a day. Oh, don't worry, we'll get to that, Mate. You're talking about physical keys. Anyway, I liken this particular phishing attack to kind of being like this keypad skimmer that kind of just lays on top of the surface. It transfers all of the information you're sending to the actual device, but it also records it along the way. Yeah, physical keys can be hacked. Just you wait. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about Cosmo. Trash, how did you know we were going to talk about Cosmo? Have you seen this before? We're going to talk about Cosmo. All right, we're not at Cosmo yet. We'll talk about Cosmo. There's probably people in the audience who are like, who the hell's Cosmo? What's this Cosmo guy? Don't worry, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Let's talk about insider threats. We're shifting away from phishing and going to insider threats. The real reason that huge companies like Uber and Equifax can't seem to stay secure isn't because they have too much technology to police. The truth is they have too many people to police, because people are the vulnerabilities here. And sometimes they're the threats too. There's several different types of insider threats. The people inside of a company that endanger the company's security itself. You have the careless worker. That is the one that keeps their password on a sticky note next to their monitor, right? You have the inside agent, maybe even an instance of corporate espionage. I know that both Uber and Lyft have been found guilty of literally doing corporate espionage on each other, literally sending people from their companies to each other's companies to like infiltrate each other. It's actually pretty pathetic. Number 3, the disgruntled employee. I didn't get the promotion I wanted. Okay, I just dropped the database on Reddit. That might be one way I retaliate. If it can't be traced back to me, maybe that would make me feel better. Just kidding. I would never do something like that. And then type number 4, the malicious insider, right? The person who is inside and is only interested in destroying as much as they can. These are all factors that you have to watch out for. An example of a very famous, probably the most famous insider threat of all time is, of course, this guy. In particular, you probably all recognize him, but he is a somewhat infamous NSA contractor, former NSA contractor, who probably fits into categories 2 and 3. He didn't want to destroy the data. He just wanted to make his boss pay. But also, I don't know, we're not going to get to the moral gray area of Snowden right now. Not all insiders are malicious. I truly believe that Snowden was not malicious. I will make that stance. But also, well, we'll get to that later. How bad can it be, right? What is an insider threat? Which is more dangerous even, ignorance or malicious intent? Well, actually, there's a big difference between ignorance and malicious intent. Ignorance is a type of vulnerability, while malicious intent is a threat. We're going to play a short little game. Everyone in the audience, get ready. I'm going to name something, and you're going to tell me whether or not it's a vulnerability or a threat. I want you to fit what we're talking about into one of these two categories, vulnerability or threat. Just say it in the chat. You ready? Out-of-date software. Is that a vulnerability or a threat? Wow, consensus. I should have asked a harder question, I guess. Correct. I would put that strongly in the vulnerability category. What about this? Russian hackers. Okay, I'm being way too easy here. I forgot you guys are like experts. You've come to like every cyber workshop. You're on top of things. All right, I'll throw you over in the threat category. Friends, buddies, best homies. Both are required for a breach to happen. You have to have a vulnerability and a threat willing to take advantage of it. They're two parts of a whole, and they overlap sometimes, such as in the case of insider threats, where your vulnerability is also your threat. But this is only half the story. When there are no technical vulnerabilities, how do threats still get in? Let's say in the Equifax breach case, Apache Struts is fully patched. All our software is patched. No one's pushing things to GitHub. Our system is implemented exactly as it's drawn out. Our software is perfect. Let's assume in a fictional universe that there are no bugs in any of our software. How then do hacks happen? Because hacks can still happen. And the answer is people. Also, yeah, I'll drink. Apache. That is how you pronounce it. It's Apache. All right, whatever. And the answer to this question is social engineering. So some of you probably have a preconception of what social engineering is. We're going to talk a little bit about social engineering. For those of you who don't know, no, social engineering is not a degree program at UCSD. You will not find it in Jacobs Hall anywhere. It is a type of psychological manipulation. 43% of all breaches include social tactics of some kind. I actually think the number is much higher than that, especially if you consider phishing to be a social engineering tactic, which I think it is. But social engineering is defined as the parts of it that are specifically designed to manipulate people. Phishing manipulate people, but they also have like a technical component. Social engineering is the isolation of just the human manipulation. And yes, it is cognitive science. Social engineering is used in the hacking community because it is incredibly good at defeating traditional security measures. It's one thing to have a very strict procedure on how you handle certain requests for authentication, right? And it's a completely different situation to put someone in such psychological duress that despite what protocol says they're supposed to do, their morals, their conscience says to do what you say. Now, I have to be clear here. This is some dangerous stuff we're talking about, and I want you guys to take it all seriously, all right? Humans are naturally social creatures. Just look at me and my roommate Tejas here at the Birch Aquarium interacting socially with our phones. Betraying a human's trust hurts them. Just because you didn't intend to hurt them doesn't mean there was no harm done. Just because you put them in that intense situation for a few moments and then say, okay, JK, it was just a prank, bro, doesn't mean that it makes it okay. You still cause damage. And so the bottom line is, please do not try any of this at home. We're going to talk about it so that you know what these situations are, what these dangerous techniques are. But I want you to use this knowledge to protect yourself. Always for defense, never for offense. You ready? All right. Let's get our priorities straight. Take that, liberals. I have to drink to that one. Oh my God. The Jedi way. All right. Let's get our priorities straight here. There are lots of different ways that you can harass someone and be destructive with social engineering. In fact, if you were going to make a tier list of all the different ways you could harass someone with social engineering, it would look probably something like this. Like level C here, you're talking like doxing, which for those of you who don't know, docs is short for documents, which basically means if I have your docs, it means I have collected the documents that have information about you. For example, to dox you might mean that I have your name, your email, maybe your passwords, probably links to your social medias, pictures of you, maybe your phone number. And these are all publicly available things. But if I were to post them all online and say, hey, you know, this Storm Firefox 1 guy, his name is actually Matei, I have his address right here, you know, it undermines what some people value in their online experience, which is their privacy. It's not information you always want out there. Especially if doxing can sometimes commonly pivot into sexual harassment. When that information is released and a person's virtual identity is stripped away, they can become the victim of some pretty horrific abuses. So doxing, despite being the bottom tier as far as harassment goes, social engineering wise, it still sucks. And it's probably one that most of us are familiar with. You move up to like level B, harassing someone, All these other levels, by the way, build off of finding someone's personal information, build off of doxing someone. Level B is when you start doing things that disrupt their daily lives, like the actual physical, their home, right? So what I mean by pizza and Mormons is, think of it this way. If I know your address and I know your name, I can probably go to Papa John's website and ship you 40 pizzas, right? And when those 40 pizzas get there, you're going to have to pay for them or not or something. The point is it's going to put you in a tough situation. It's annoying. It's a form of harassment, and it sucks when someone does that to you. I think all of us have experienced this in some kind of way. The only reason I put Mormons as part of this category is because there's actually an interesting thing that you can do. And I'd just like to take another moment here to say, please do not try this at home. But if you go onto the Latter-day Saints official website, there is a place where you can anonymously request to have a Mormon missionary come to your house and talk to you about Jesus. That has happened to me. I have had Mormons sent to my house before as a highly amusing to them, but less so amusing to my family prank for no other reason than to just harass me and disrupt me. It's kind of unpleasant. It's hard to sit there in front of like a nice Mormon family and tell them that like I am a victim of a prank and that they should go home. It's just rough. 9500 Gilman Drive. I'll drink to that. Oh my goodness. So yeah, it sucks. Things like that, sending things to your home personally to disrupt you, is a pain in the butt. You move up to level A, and we're talking disruption of infrastructure, things that make your basic human needs possible. An attack like this is something like I call up the utilities company, such as PG&E, and I say to PG&E, "Hi, my name is Aaron Eason. Here's my first name. Here's my last name. Here's like my social security number, the last 4 digits of my social, to prove that I am who I am. I'm away from the house right now, right? This property that I live at. If you look on file, you'll see that I'm the one paying the maintenance bills, the utilities for this house. I'd like to shut those off because currently I previously had tenants living in there and they just moved out and I want to save the money. So can you please turn off the electricity and water to this property? Because we were not going to have tenants for a couple of weeks and we're going to be gone. So thank you. That'd be great. Thanks, PG&E. Bye." That is a basic idea of how you would use someone's personal information to disrupt the water and electricity going to their home. Kind of would suck if that happened to me. Fortunately, I've never experienced that, so good on me. But that's when you start getting into the level of harassment where your basic way of life is being threatened. Finally, there's one extra tier on top. It is S rank for a reason. Can anyone guess what the top tier of social engineering harassment is? Correct. Thank you, all of you, for guessing. Enhanced interrogation. No, it is swatting. For those of you who are unfamiliar with swatting, swatting is the process of calling a SWAT team to your house. It is as simple as picking up my phone, calling 911 and saying, I have a bomb, I have a knife, I'm at this address, I'm going to kill everyone. The FBI or the police are obligated to send a SWAT team, an armed team with assault weapons, to that house to disarm the situation. And that sucks if that happens to you. It's one of the worst things you can do to a person. It's pathetic. And all swatters should get swatted themselves and see how they feel. Oh, anyways, let's keep going here. We'll talk a little bit more about swatting in a second, but I want to pause for a second for a quick poll. Go ahead, and you can kind of imagine what the options for A, B, and C are going to be. I'm not going to talk about swatting because I don't want anyone to admit if they've been swatted, but go ahead and tell me if you've been A, B'd, or C'd before. Just pick the highest one. If you've ever had your utilities disrupted, if you've ever been doxxed, if you've ever been pizza'd, and if you haven't been anything, then just ignore the poll. If I could respond to this poll, I would answer I would answer B. I've had Mormons come to my house. It's not ideal. It doesn't look like too many of us have had to put up with this kind of crap, which is good. It does suck, but basically it looks like one of us also admitted to experiencing the B tier of suffering, and 3 or 4 of us have experienced being doxxed in the past, which is never a fun situation. It's always this scramble to kind of trying to reassert your own privacy. It's traumatic. I'll go ahead and use that word. It is to varying degrees traumatic. So again, don't do any of this. The only reason I'm talking about it is so that you can inform yourself. Anyways, let's talk about swatting. Let's do this. So I already defined this, but it is the act of faking a call to emergency services to get them to storm a location, disrupting businesses and endangering people's lives. It's actually been a point of concern since the 1970s when the 911 system was kind of popularized, actually. People would call in bomb threats to situations, and that would cause a lot of problems. And they had created a lot of technology to track where those calls come from. But as of the around late 2000s, 2008-ish, modern technology has made it painfully easy to do this anonymously, and it has caused a huge spike in swatting. So technologies like caller ID spoofing, which is kind of self-explanatory, they just can't tell who's calling them, right? Because in truth, swatting is easy, but swatting without getting caught, without being traced back to the person who made the call and getting in legal trouble is a little difficult. But with a lot of this modern technology, it becomes trivial. Caller ID spoofing is a step. Text-to-speech services online, such as AOL's Relay service. AOL's Relay service is a service in which you sign up, and it's for people who have speech impediments to make phone calls. Literally, you type what you want the person to say, and they will say it into the phone for you. So it's just another, and they don't track who's making phone calls through that service, or at least they didn't when this was prevalently used to cause swatting. And that, of course, would allow people to do it anonymously. And also calling non-emergency lines. For example, I know 911 will connect me to an operator who definitely knows where I'm calling from. But if I just call the lobby phone number for the police station by my house, that phone that's sitting in the lobby may not necessarily be monitored for emergencies and may not be recorded, and they may not have set up call tracing on that line. But if I call that number and tell them, hey, I've got a bomb, I'm going to blow it up at this address, you have to come stop me, they're still obligated to respond to that. That's still one way to get them to come to your house without actually calling 911 and be anonymous about it, right? Please don't do any of this. So as of late, there have been attempts, I will say the word attempts pretty respectfully here, to legislate and restrict people's ability to do this without getting punished. Let's go over all of the recent attempts to make swatting illegal in the United States. The first attempt was actually in California. There is a senator called Ted Lieu, who in 2011 proposed to increase swatting penalties in the Senate. Ted was then promptly swatted 2 days later. So that sucks. Then in 2015, New Jersey Assemblyman Paul D. Moriarty announced a bill to increase sentences for hoax emergency calls within the state of New Jersey. So this was statewide legislation. Of course, you probably know where this is going. He was then promptly swatted as retaliation for this policy. In 2015 also, there was a bipartisan bill in Congress sponsored by Congresspeople Catherine Clark and Patrick Meehan that made swatting a federal crime, a felony, with increased penalties. Catherine Clark, in particular, had the cops called to her mansion, and she and her entire family were then swatted. So damn. Well, that sucks. Despite the uphill battle, it is now illegal. It is now a felony to do swatting, and it was first made criminal in Go, California. And the first time that this law was exercised was to sentence a 2019 swatter to 20 years in prison on the basis of manslaughter, because this particular swatter was a serial swatter that had done it literally hundreds of times to people. he would actually charge for his services. It's like, hey, if you pay me $20, I'll swat this person. And I think his name was like something super offensive and had the word SWAT in it. But one of his swattings actually ended up being fatal. There was a misfire on the SWAT team's part that actually killed the target of the swatting. And that's what kind of intensified the investigation into that whole situation. And he ended up in prison for what I think is a light sentence of 20 years. So good on us, California. Maybe now it'll kind of die down a little bit. It's kind of ridiculous that we have to put up with this. Anyways, that's all I'll talk about swatting. Just wanted to kind of mention the history of that, since it's kind of something that's used as a threat in the more juvenile hacker circles, and I'm glad that it's kind of dying out. Let's go back in time for a minute. Let's actually take a minute to drink. I need to drink. And no, I don't think they could have swatted Congress. Nice try, though. We're doing good here. This is going to be some fun topics. We're finally getting to Cosmo. We're almost to Cosmo. This is going to be fun. Oh, man. Dingus just joined. I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't just seen Dingus join the call. I think that's a very impressive name. I'm going to drink to that. Not to call you out, Dingus. I just noticed you come in. All right. We're going to keep going here. Let's go back in time. Specifically, let's go back in time to 2012. Yeah, remember how worried we were about that? That was crazy. I think it was like the rapture, or maybe just the continent split in two. I don't actually remember. Here's something you probably do remember, but probably don't remember happened in 2012. SOPA. Yeah, you remember SOPA? The big privacy-violating legislation that everyone was real panicked about. If you went to any website for like 3 months in the middle of 2012, you would have been met with a screen that looks kind of like this. It's not an advertisement. It's some kind of political stimulus type thing that's designed to get you aware of SOPA, the piece of legislation that was in Congress at the time that was threatening to crack down on internet freedom of speech, basically, and restrict access to certain websites, which, of course, in my opinion, was a bad deal. Nowadays, of course, privacy-violating legislation gets passed all the time, and we've just become so desensitized to it that we kind of accept it and don't really make a big deal out of it anymore. But at the time this happened, this was a big deal. This was something worth getting angry about. And there were some people who got very angry about it. I did not see that coming. I can't believe I used that. All right. So we're going to talk about a group of hackers. Their names was the Underground Nazi Activist Group, or UG-Nazi for short. Now, despite their name, they had no ties to alt-right Nazism or anything like that. They were simply middle school aged hacker activists that were really angry about the privacy laws, like SOPA coming out, and I think another one after that. I don't remember what it's called. But, they wanted to be edgy, so they put the word Nazi in their organization name. And as we'll see, not all of them were great people. But in 2012, they were formed exclusively to fight against censorship legislation. That was the sole purpose of it. And they did some very high-profile stunts to combat that. They were an activist group. That part of their name was correct. For example, they did things like hack the Westboro Baptist Church members' Twitter account and say things like, you guys are a disgrace, and other pretty amusing things. Things that would be pretty insensitive if it hadn't happened to the Westboro Baptist Church. They defaced the UFC website after they came out in public support of SOPA, although they got ragged on plenty for that anyways without being needed to be defaced. In addition to just these two activist stunts, UG-Nazi also took down the NASDAQ, took down CIA.gov, took down California.gov, took down all of Twitter, and also Papa John's, which is kind of an interesting spread of websites to be credited with taking down. Papa John's in particular, as the story goes, was taken down purely because UG-Nazi had ordered a pizza and they were 40 minutes late. So they proceeded to hack Papa John's and take down their website for a full 48 hours, which is hilarious in my mind, even though it probably cost a lot of money. This last one, though, is what landed them on a lot of watch lists. For some reason, hacking CIA.gov and California.gov and Twitter didn't really raise any eyebrows, but when they stole 500,000 credit cards and dumped that publicly, there was one organization that took a big interest in that. That is one very, very fast way to get the attention of the FBI and also the Secret Service. So let me take a drink real fast. Yes, they took down the Papa. I gotta hack me some more Papa dough so we can get Papa John's once we're in person again. Once we get these events in person again, we gotta have Papa John's just once. Not all the time anymore, just once. Just for nostalgia purposes, you know what I mean? Because we used to have it all the time. Papa John's is so expensive. But do you know how much Papa dough we have? It's insane. Emily in particular would coupon shop to the point where I remember sitting next to her and she would order like 40 pizzas and pay like $30 for it. And I remember just thinking like, what? How? The pizza model's crazy. The pizza model, which is literally a term in economics, refers to selling things for massive profit margins and then couponing them heavily to attract buyers. It's also the furniture model. It's also the donut model. Anyway, I got distracted pretty heavily there, so I'm going to take an extra sip. Let's go. Let's go. Oh, did I lose focus here? There we go. Despite all of these very high-profile hacks, what made UG-Nazi unique was that they did zero actual technical hacking. Everything they did was human hacking. And so we enter in one of our more compelling characters into the story, Cosmo the God, as his title goes. He was not actually a god, but that was his username on a lot of websites, and that is what he became known as. He was 15 years old at the time these attacks took place, and he was from Long Beach, California, so he's pretty close to us, or at least some of us. His occupation at the time was the official, most skilled, most talented human hacker who worked for UG-Nazi or was part of the activist group. He dropped out of high school due to swatting. Don't misinterpret that sentence. He didn't drop out of high school because he was doing too much swatting. He had to drop out of high school because his high school asked him to leave because him being there caused the school to be swatted so much because he was so infamous in hacker circles and was swatted so frequently. As the story goes, he was once in high school for a week where every single day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, this entire school was swatted because of someone who wanted to get at Cosmo specifically. They would call up the police department and be like, you know, hey, I'm Cosmo, I'm going to blow up the school, so on and so forth. And that's how they knew it was associated with Cosmo. But Cosmo was, of course, just a victim in all this, and they actually forced Cosmo to get kicked out of school because of it. Honestly, pretty rough, but also rough for the school. Like, imagine being in school on a Friday and like you hear sirens. Like, imagine you've just been through like 4 days of swatting and you hear the cops again. Like, I wonder what that Friday must have been like. Anyways, his specialty in the group was account hijacking. And let's go over a definition real fast. Account hijacking is not the same as simply knowing the password to an account. Knowing the password to an account means I can log in as you, but it doesn't mean I can hijack your account. Account hijacking is when you can cause someone to lose access to their own account forever. You hijack it, you take it from them. It's your account now. You can reset the password and they can't. And this is a lot more complicated and a lot more devastating. If someone logged into, I don't know, your YouTube account or something, that would kind of suck. They could probably do some mean stuff from there. But if they hijacked your YouTube account and you lost access to it forever, that would really suck. Same goes for Facebook and a bunch of others. So in order to hijack accounts, you need to have mastery of a technique that is commonly referred to as snowballing, which is kind of like credential stuffing, but it's not just the consolidating of password and email information. It's the consolidating of all the information required to log into a person. It's basically the process of logging into a person's accounts and slowly assembling a docs, snowballing personal information about the person, such as, oh, by hacking into this account, I was able to get this person's last four numbers of their credit card number. And using the last four numbers of their credit card number, I can get into this other account they have. We'll see some prime examples of snowballing here pretty soon. If you have access to 9 accounts, you can probably get access to the 10th via the technique of snowballing. The amount of information you have access to when you have access to a person's, like 9 of a person's accounts, is probably sufficient to let you get access to the 10th. Whether it's common information about, like, common answers to their security questions. If you have access to a person's Facebook and you can see where they went to school and, you know, what their pet's name was, you can probably answer their security questions. And honestly, that's sometimes possible without even logging in to their Facebook account. You can just publicly see a lot of the answers to security questions, which is another reason why security questions are so bad. Wait, I went backwards. Going forwards here. I don't know why that graphic appears after everything else. I don't think it's supposed to be that way. Let's move on. So keeping up with Cosmo, this is kind of what he did, is hijack accounts. But he doesn't do that anymore. He was arrested in December of 2012, but he avoided any kind of real trouble by confessing his crimes and taking a pretty hefty plea deal that basically set him off scot-free, no real punishments whatsoever. In exchange, though, he now works as a white hat hacker to help make computers more secure. He works for companies that specialize in computer security and uses his knowledge and his experience to basically audit those companies and figure out what's wrong with them and what makes them hackable. In fact, here's a picture of Cosmo. One thing I'll mention is that he's the guy on the right. He is a huge dude. He's like 7 feet. I'm not even kidding. This dude is insane. Anyways, Cosmo, as part of his plea deal, shared his hacking techniques, his human hacking techniques, with the entire world to help keep companies accountable for bad security practices. And we're going to dive a little bit into what some of those bad security practices are. So Cosmo has a series of recipes, a series of techniques that lets him get access to different types of accounts. We're going to talk about his recipes because they paint a really good picture of just how easy it is to get into these websites using human hacking, using social engineering, using no technical experience whatsoever, just the audacity to perform something that is definitely illegal and do it in such a way that you have knowledge of the internals of the system and you know the protocols and you can abuse those protocols because the actual protocols themselves are faulty. So here's what Cosmo would do when he wanted to get into a Netflix account. This was actually the first hack he ever did at age 13. He had no technical experience whatsoever. But he discovered that if you call, like on your phone, Netflix support, and you have the name associated with an account, the email associated with the account, and the home address of the person who lives there, they will reset your password for you over the phone. Wait, what? Hold on. I mean, I have a lot of people's names, emails, and homes addresses. That's stuff you could easily find in like my contacts list for people. And that gives me access to their password? Huh. Yes, it does give you free Netflix. And by the way, I don't think this one works anymore. I think Netflix made it a little bit more difficult. Some of these don't work anymore, but this really was how you could do this in like 2010, which is insane that you could do this at all. Yes, it does give you free Netflix, but more importantly, it gives you access to the last 4 digits on the billing credit card associated with a Netflix account. If you can log into someone's Netflix account, you can see those 4 digits that they're using to pay for the account. And this is where snowballing came into play. Cosmo would see these digits and he would add it to his stash of information that is associated with this account. And he might use it to hack other accounts, as we'll see here very, very soon. For example, when Cosmo wanted to hack Xbox Live, in 2010, he wanted to try and reset the password for the Xbox username Cosmo because he wanted that username. He felt like he was Cosmo and the username Cosmo was already taken, and he wanted to see if he could take control of that account, which he did. And here's how he did it. At the time, you could reset the Xbox username with just the name of the account and the last 4 digits of a credit card that's associated with the account. And you can probably guess where I'm going with this. What he found is he found the email associated with the Xbox username Cosmo. He looked it up on Netflix and discovered that the account exists. He used his Netflix hacking strategy to get the digits of the credit card from the Netflix account of the same person with this Xbox account, took the digits, sent them over to Windows Live, and used them to reset the Xbox user password. And that is how he took control of the Cosmo Xbox Live username, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. This is credential stuffing, but it's the more advanced version. It's the snowballing effect. There's a really good Wired article about this, actually. And that was kind of when Cosmo was born. That was his specialty, is snowballing all of this information together and using it to get into as many accounts as possible. This was his technique, the one that he perfected. Let me drink to that. We're probably about 10 minutes away from the end here, by the way, so thank you for sticking with me. XX, Cosmo, XX. All right, I'm moving on here. Cosmo versus AOL. This one was kind of sad. He actually gave up how he hacked into AOL accounts as part of his plea bargain, and when the police heard how he was able to do it, they were absolutely blown away. All you have to do to reset an AOL account, like reset the password, is a last name and the zip code. That's it. That's all you needed. In fact, that's all you needed up until the year 2018. This went unfixed for a decade after this was revealed. Here's what you do. You call AOL tech support, you request a password reset, provide the last name and zip code, done. They tell you what the new password is over the phone, and you're in. They only recently fixed that. Ooh, where's the like sweating blob emoji? I should have put that there. Oh, I think I did this, actually. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now. That's some oof. That's some huge oof. Hold up, let me hack the government. All right. Here is how Cosmo got into Amazon accounts. This one was a little bit more complicated, but it was still perfectly doable. Check this out. So first, Amazon would require the last 4 digits to reset a password. Okay, fair. The last 4 digits is something that a lot of other different accounts can give you, right? The Xbox Live, the what's it called, Netflix. He had a lot of ways to get that. So what he would do is he actually wouldn't do any of that. It was even easier than that. All he would do is he would call up and add a new credit card number to the account via the phone by just saying the email associated with the account and the credit card number he wanted to add. Then he would hang up, call back, and give them the last 4 digits to the card they just added, and they would reset his password, which is a meme. That really makes you think. Amazon, with a company having like one of the largest market caps in the world, you think they would like, I don't know, not just give out accounts? Granted, this was back in 2012. I think this one is fixed. Cosmo versus PayPal. This one's in a similar vein as to Amazon, but it's a little bit more complicated. Still pretty good though. So PayPal, if you want to reset your password through PayPal, it requires a 2-factor authentication. Whoa, unbeatable, via phone confirmation. And you also have to confirm a bank routing number on the account. However, also, like the Amazon issue, all you had to do was create a fake bank account via eTrade.com. If you sign up for eTrade, which by the way is free to just sign up, they will give you a virtual bank account with a routing number. You add the fake bank account to PayPal, usually over the phone. You add a Google Voice number to PayPal, a new phone number, and a new bank account to the account. Then when you go to reset your password, you just pick the new phone number, confirm it. It will send the 2FA to the phone number you just added on the account. Then it asks for the bank routing number, and you enter the eTrade number that you just created, and it requests you to set a new password. You type in the new password, and you hijack the account. Done. Like literally, right? Anyone had their PayPal hacked before? This might be how it was done. I've never had my PayPal, but I've heard of plenty of people who had their PayPal hacked. Let's talk about Apple. This one actually happened recently. So Apple requires some information, so like a fair amount of information. This was clearly like a misimplementation on Apple's part. Basically, the idea is, in order to reset an Apple account, you needed 4 pieces of information: the full name, date of birth, last 4 digits of a credit card, and a phone number. But in the actual implementation of this password reset, you actually only needed 3 out of the 4. You didn't need the full 4, which means all you have to do is call Apple support, provide the name and date of birth and phone number, the easiest 3 to get, the 3 that are probably in my contacts for hundreds of people, and done. They reset your password and I'm in your account. Easy peasy. Now, this was before Apple did the 2-factor authentication with like the cell phone, like your Apple phone lets you into your Apple account and stuff like that. But even that wasn't that bad. You get in pretty easily. You would have to explicitly enable that in a lot of cases. And if you didn't have an iPhone and somehow had an Apple account, which is not completely unheard of, it wouldn't matter. So that's a huge joke. That actually was as recently as 2016 that was a problem. It might still be a problem, but I want to say Apple probably patched it. Cosmo versus Google. This is pretty intense. This was Cosmo's greatest hack that he ever performed as a black hat hacker. This was actually a big deal in a lot of hacker circles because it revealed a critical flaw in the way that Google authenticated people and elicited a direct patch by Google, and also put a huge portion of the internet in direct control of Cosmo. This is fun. Let's go. So the target of this hack was the CEO of Cloudflare, Matthew Prince. Specifically, they wanted to get into Matthew Prince's corporate G Suite email. The problem is that Prince was using a hardware pin. Yeah, maybe something that looked like this. It might have just been a Duo hardware pin, but it's really hard to get past this. It really is. You can actually get one of these to use with your UCSD email, by the way. You can go, I think, to the ETS services and request one of these, and they'll give you one, and you can use this instead of your phone. But honestly, that sucks. The only reason to do that is if you didn't have a phone, but if you didn't have a phone, like, honestly, that's kind of rough. Anyway, so because he couldn't do it without the hardware pin, his new target was Matthew Prince's personal Gmail account, which was listed as a recovery email for the G Suite account that Matthew Prince had. So easy enough, right? Surely we can hack into that. Oh, sorry. His personal Gmail also uses 2-factor authentication. But the 2-factor authentication wasn't hardware pin. It was just phone-based. And this gave Cosmo an idea. Time to break 2FA. So, Cosmo versus 2FA. First, his personal email used phone-based 2FA. So what Cosmo discovered from Prince's personal phone number was that the carrier for his phone number was AT&T. So what Cosmo did was first, he'd call AT&T and provide Prince's social security number as verification. Now, I'm not going to gloss over this detail. You might be asking yourself, how did Cosmo have Prince's social security number? Surely you couldn't just get that for like $1 online. But the truth is, actually, yes, you can. It is incredibly easy to buy and sell social security numbers online. And in an interview that Wired did with Cosmo the God, he revealed that he paid $1.60 for this information before he continued with the hack. $1.60 for Prince's social security number on an obscure darknet website was all he needed to perform this hack. All right, we're going to keep going. He called AT&T, provided his social security number as verification, like, hi, I'm Matthew Prince. I'd like to perform some changes to my account. On the call, he set up call forwarding from Prince's phone to Cosmo's personal Google Voice number. So any call that comes to Prince's phone goes to Google Voice instead. Then Cosmo initiated the 2-factor authentication login for Matthew's personal Google account. And the PIN was sent to Cosmo's own Google Voice. Then he used the personal email to recover the corporate email. And this is where the bug in Google kicks in. As it turned out, when you go to log into a corporate email with a hardware PIN, it's supposed to ask you for the hardware PIN. And that goes for when you try to reset the password on the account via one of the recovery options too. If you try to recover an email, it's supposed to still ask you for the hardware PIN. This was a bug in Google at the time that enabled Cosmo to do it without the hardware PIN. At the time, if you recovered a Gmail account using a recovery email, you didn't actually have to submit the hardware PIN to do it. So that's the bug in Google that allowed Cosmo to get into his personal email and then use the personal email to get into the corporate email without the hardware PIN. So at that point, as soon as Cosmo got into Prince's corporate G Suite email, at that point, Cloudflare was totally owned. Cosmo had complete control over Cloudflare. Now let's talk about Cloudflare real fast. Access to Cloudflare's admin tools are kind of like keys to the internet, because Cloudflare provides domain resolution to over 20 million websites, which, by the way, is about 15% of the accessible web. So Cosmo basically had the keys to 15% of the internet. And you could do a lot with that. You could cause some real damage with that. And while it does beg a question why the CEO of Cloudflare had access to all of these tools, then hopefully maybe that's a resolved issue now. But at the time, that's what Cosmo had. And what did he do with it? Well, I'm glad you asked. They then decided to redirect 4chan to their Twitter page for 20 minutes using Cloudflare's DNS resolution. I'd be willing to bet that they could have sold this exploit for some real serious money. They could have sold the keys to the castle to some serious hackers. But they did this. I guess at the end of the day, they were middle schoolers, literally. So the pros of this strategy were that they instantly acquired what they were looking for, internet infamy. The cons of this is that they went to prison. So, I don't know. Maybe at the time it was kind of a fair bet, but had some downsides, I think. So in summary, just to quickly wrap up talking about Cosmo here, Cosmo's eventual disclosures are part of why the internet is a safer place today. Stories like Cosmo's are becoming more typical in the modern age. We have stories of kids growing up on the internet and learning technical skills and being ostracized and ending up becoming black hat hackers. But you also have stories like Cosmo's where they end up becoming hackers, but then they kind of maybe end up in trouble with the law a little bit, and then they come on over to the white hat side and basically become knights that defend the internet. And this is kind of what Cosmo eventually turned into. 2FA is annoying as hell. We all hate it, but it is wildly effective. This story was an isolated incident. Very rarely is 2FA bypassed in this kind of way. Here's an email that UCSD sent somewhere towards mid-December of last year, talking about the impact of adding Duo two-factor authentication to UC San Diego. What's interesting about this email is it doesn't really give you an understanding of the quantity here, right? It says, we have seen a 50 to 60% reduction in compromised accounts overall, which really begs the question, how many compromised accounts is that? Like, did we go from having 2 compromised accounts to 1, or did we go from having 78,000 compromised accounts to having 39,000? Like, not really clear, is it? But whatever. And the rest of UG Nazi went to prison for murder. Any questions? That's the end of my lecture. Oh, yo, Bread's actually posting it. Yeah. No, now is definitely the time to start asking questions about this this article. Actually, let me go ahead and forward you guys some stuff before I forget. I'm going to go ahead and post a link in the shared notes to my Notion document for this. This Notion document shows a lot of stuff, but it has links to information about the Uber breach, Equifax breach, the Apache struts, CVE I talked about, the Marines email breach. Basically, it has all my sources. And and a couple of other fun things, and also a link to the slides. So if you're interested in downloading the slides and checking them out yourself, I'm not going to comment on that, Danny. Sorry. But oh, by the way, before any of you guys leave, I just have to really quick shill here. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. We had basically no one leave this whole workshop, so that was great. This week in ACM, I just feel obligated to tell you about what we're doing this week. Tomorrow, we're actually having 2 workshops. The first one is a collaboration with TESC to do resume critiques. If you want to get your resume absolutely destroyed by Ronak and everyone else in TESC, please join us on Zoom at 4 p.m. tomorrow. That'll be fun. If you aren't doing anything else with your 4 p.m. Thursdays, go do that. And as soon as you're finished getting your resume absolutely dragged, come on down to Hack.Pi's, I don't know, it's like the 6th workshop so far this quarter. They've had a lot of hack schools this quarter, but this one's about web dev with Flask, and it's the second one in that series. So if you went to the first one, you should go to this one. It's going to be on ACM Live. It's at 7:30. So we all know you don't have lives. Just go to it. On Sunday, I highly recommend that on this hallowed Mother's Day. By the way, public service announcement, Sunday is Mother's Day. I know it's quarantine, but you only have about 4 days left to get your mom something before she thinks that you hate her because you didn't get her anything for Mother's Day. So start thinking about it. On the off chance you make it all the way to 6 p.m. on Mother's Day without actually giving her something, if you come to this workshop, maybe you can make her something right then and there with some homemade arts and crafts. That would be fun. So for next week, I feel obligated to say this. This week was supposed to be my 3DS hacking seminar, but I was very, very busy. As you can see by this slide, the date for that was originally supposed to be now. Instead, we did the human hacking seminar. Next week, we're going to be doing this. I promise it'll be done, and I promise it'll be great. Be there or be square. I'm serious. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be the best workshop. But also, I have to start it soon. All right. Anyways, thank you so much, all of you, for coming. I'm free to answer questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording now, though, probably. I don't think anyone else has any questions.